Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas, sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet, here in Burrawang, New South Wales. It is Monday morning, about 9:20 in the morning. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all the way over in North Carolina, Meridith Elliott Powell, where I think it must be 7:20 in the evening Sunday night, Meredith.
That is right. It is Father's Day here in the U.S. We're celebrating, and it is 7:20 on a Sunday night.
Wow, Father's Day. It's Father's Day in Australia comes in September, but I do get friends of mine in the US wishing me happy Father's Day
Yeah.
for today. So that's cool. But I like it because it's one of the few times that America is behind Australia. Usually Australia's behind things, but on the time zones, Australia is ahead. Anyway, Meredith, thanks for joining me. Now,
Yeah, thanks
Meredith,
for having me.
your husband is a retired dentist, but I didn't know that when I contacted you. I'd been following you on LinkedIn, and I read one of your articles, which I thought was just fantastic because it talks about an aspect of business which a lot of people don't seem to have the ability to do, and that is to anticipate. And you wrote this article, and you also popped in a little 1 minute video as well on that article, and about how important anticipation is in business, but how important it's going to be in 2026. What do you see in business? Because you're talking to an audience here of dental people who are
Yeah.
often slow in business and slow to, they're more technical than intuitive sometimes. How can they learn to anticipate things more rather than react after the event? Because I think that's really the tragedy in dentistry, is that a lot of dentists never react on time, and they've spent their whole life being a dentist and not really received the rewards that they could have had they been a little bit more proactive. So talk about anticipation, and let's talk about your history in speaking as well, because you did mention to me before we hit the record button that you've been speaking for over 20 years and
Yeah.
you were in corporate America first up. So let's talk about that and then come back to the article.
Okay. Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I can really relate to dentistry is the fact that I kind of had this crazy career. I started out in travel and tourism, moved into the healthcare space, and then went into financial services. And I never thought my career made any sense. I wasn't like a dentist who got out of, college, decided I wanted to go to dental school and knew what I would do for the rest of my life. I was kind of lost in that arena. But it wasn't until I was doing a podcast one day and somebody asked the very question that you asked that I realized I get into industries when they're going through massive disruption. It isn't an industry that I'm attracted to. It's the disruption. I got into travel and tourism after a hurricane. I got into healthcare when managed care showed up in the US. And I got into financial services when it started to get heavily regulated and the economy took a dive and interest rates went through the roof. Most people hate those things. I love them. And so in right around 2004, not long after, I hit the age of 40, which, do the math. I'm fairly old right now. But I decided that 40 was a great age. We were at a good point in our lives. If I was ever going to start a business, it should be now. And so I went out on my own as a consultant, helping companies strategize and grow. I'd never been involved in my husband's dental practice ever. We kept that very separate. And then I was doing a lot, and 2008 hit, and my husband's dental practice got flooded, and the economy went south everywhere in the world. And the businesses that I had worked with and consulted with had done incredibly well. And people said, "Would you come talk to our company? Would you, talk to our Rotary Club?" And I did. And somebody said, you should visit the National Speakers Association. So I grabbed my husband, who was a dentist, and said, "I don't know anything about this association, but you have to come to this meeting with me." And interestingly enough, I was blown away by what it took to grow a speaking business. We used everything that I did to grow my speaking business to rebuild his dental practice. He made more money the last 10 years he practiced than the first 20 he did. And so I say all that to say that's kind of my background and my history. It has a lot of tie to the dentistry world, but anticipation was everything in it. When you think about 2004 and you think about 2008, the pace of change we felt back then was tough. But right now, you are living in a world where the pace of change has increased 183% in just 4 years. 183%. 4 out of 5 employees are burned out, stressed out, cannot handle any more change. And guess what? More change is coming. So for any dentist listening to this podcast, the one thing I can guarantee you is the way you practice dentistry right now will not be the way you practice dentistry 1 year from now. Because if it is, you will no longer be here. I'm going to say one more statistic and then I'll take a breath. Gartner released a report, they're a leading research firm, that said in the next 10 years, 45% of our Fortune 500 companies will no longer exist. They will not exist because they make a bad product, because they're too expensive, because they're led incorrectly. They're going to disappear because they will become irrelevant. And you need to learn to anticipate, because in today's marketplace, you cannot become irrelevant.
That's the truth. Relevance is so important, and we've the classic example is Kodak
Yes.
decided that we're going to stay in film instead of go digital, and so there's that anticipation. Who would have thought that at that time that digital would take over film? But somebody did, and somebody jumped at that opportunity. It's interesting you should say that. On a personal level, my wife, who came to work in our practice after our children were old enough
Yeah.
to find their own way home from school, and I brought her in as a concierge, and she morphed from a concierge into a front office receptionist, because one morning when she turned up, both receptionists were off sick and she needed to answer the phones, and she worked out that we didn't really have a system for answering the phone. So she developed that. When I left my practice, my wife Jane decided she would speak and coach dental front office teams on how to answer the phone. So niche, right down.
Yeah.
Became Australia's #1 authority on phone skills, because you can lecture and rev people up as much as you want, but if you can't keep them accountable for what they're doing and you don't know what they're doing, you don't know how to measure it. And so we ended up coaching, or Jane ended up coaching, by listening to recordings of incoming calls at practices. Every client, we accessed their incoming calls to hear what their customers were saying and what their team members were saying. And then we could work with individuals as well as with individual issues along the way. Fast forward to last year, in middle of last year, Meredith, and we thought, we're going to be out of a job. AI is going to replace with AI receptionists. And then I thought, how good is the large language model for producing the answers that people should be giving and answering the phone? And it's not that good, because there's a lot of slop in the large language model. And then I thought, is Jane's stuff out there in that World Wide Web?
Yeah.
It's not. Her stuff's all been quarantined. You can buy it on Kajabi, but you can't even download from Kajabi. You can only watch on Kajabi.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work. And I thought, we could develop an AI which is Jane answering the phone. So she's down here at the moment. All the AI receptionists are all robots designed by software engineers, but hers is in demand. Her product's in demand because it's her coming to answer the phone. It's her voice even that people said, "Oh, we want Jane's voice." So it's
wow.
again, it's anticipation. I tell that because it's anticipating. But if I hadn't, what I did was, when I thought of the idea, I thought, well, let's not build it. Let's see if people want it. So we emailed my list, emailed Jane's list, and we got 300 dentists said, "Yeah, I want it."
Wow.
And so then I thought, okay, well, now we better build it quickly. So that's anticipation. But sometimes people miss that anticipation, and I don't know where it comes from. Whether it can't be genetic, because I find in my family, some of my family have been very conservative compared to me, and others, match me. But there's no logical reason as to why some people are conservative and why some people say, I'll take the risk, because really anticipation is about risk.
Yeah,
What
I
do you do?
think I think a I think a couple of things on that. I think first of all, for dentists, you're not making any money unless the drill is moving. And so your head down, get it done. Just you have to be so present in the work that you do. You don't have the luxury of strategizing because if you're not focused on the patient in front of you, then that patient isn't getting the level of care. So I think if you want to anticipate and you need to anticipate, you need to create the time to anticipate, right? Like I really don't want my dentist anticipating while I'm in the chair, right? Thank you. No, please just be focused on what is going on with me right now. And quite frankly, most people don't have the time to anticipate because they're trying to do the job at hand. So there's a couple of tools that we use and that I developed is first of all, number one, you need to understand that in today's marketplace, this is a different time than you've ever practiced before because there's more happening outside of your dental practice than inside of it that can impact your ability to be successful. You can do everything right inside your practice, and outside forces can put your practice under, right? Or you could miss an opportunity that could have taken your practice to the next level. So I tell the people that I work with, the companies that I consult with, is every 3 months, every quarter, you need to get your head out of your dental practice. That's what we'll say for this. And, I'm sure most of you have team meetings, and I want you to take 20 minutes out of a team meeting, no more than 20 minutes. And I want you and your team to talk about what I call the skeptic tool. And the skeptic tool is just a series of words. And the words are society, competition, economics, politics, technology, industry. In my world, we say customers, you would say patients. I'll repeat it. Society, competition, economics, politics, technology, industry, patients. And all you're going to do with you and your team is just brainstorm. How do you see society changing? What's happening politically? How are things changing with technology? What's happening from an economics standpoint? How's technology, how is our industry changing? What's changing with our patients? And while brainstorming that, you're conditioning yourself to anticipate shifts. Because at the end of the discussion, you just ask yourself, are there any of those shifts that we need to be paying attention to right now? Like, I'll give you a big one. In your industry, I don't know what's happening in the rest of the world, but in the US, private equity is so entrenched in the dental industry and the healthcare industry right now. And it's shifting and changing the dental industry. At the same time, patients are really frustrated with practices owned by by private equity. So my point is, if you see change coming, change can be your greatest opportunity. If you ignore it, change will be the thing that will destroy your practice. The beautiful thing about it is you 100% control anticipation. You can take the time and discuss what you see coming, and you give yourself the luxury of time. And with the luxury of time, you don't even have to guess right.
So true. I remember back, it must have been 2001, I had a person come knock on my door, and I sat down with him, and he started talking about the internet, and he said, you need to own the domain dentist Parramatta, which is my town, dentistyourtown.com, as well as yourtowndentist.com. He said, I've just spoken with a guy, and he said he's going through a divorce, so he's got no money to do this. And I said, all right, I'll do it. And so it was just anticipation. I thought, yeah, this sounds like this is the way I've got to go. And because I knew that what were we using to market our dental office before that? Yellow pages. And I knew that the yellow
Yes.
page returns were diminishing slowly, and I'd anticipated when to leave yellow pages. And it was interesting because we only had a very small window of about 10 years where we were allowed to advertise in yellow pages and advertise with a big full
Right.
page. And then all of a sudden that market just disappeared. And, the yellow pages used to be good, 2 volumes down here. You could stack your monitor on it, but then it just turned into like a brochure. over a few years. But that I still remember that chap and what he did for me. And again, this worked both ways, Meredith, because I went to work with him. He became the website guy for nearly all the dentists in Australia, and he also used to bring gifts to my wife. He became the handbag fairy, and he would come with luxury handbags as a reward for the referrals that we would just spontaneous rewards for the referrals that we would send to him for bills as well. So and totally out of the blue. The first one was just totally out of the blue, and then the next one, it was quite. And I'm still in touch. His sons run a dental marketing business now, and one's just written a book, and I read the chapter that he sent me, and wrote a review for him, or a testimonial, and he said it was so good. He said he said, I'm going to cut a bit, and you're going to be on the front of the book, because
Oh,
there's usually
wow.
front and some on the back. So that was cool. So anyway, again, there's a little bit of reciprocity as well. If you are an anticipator, often the universe moves back towards you, I find.
I agree. I also think you made me think of something else is that there's, another thing that we talk about when we talk about anticipation is the whole idea of replacing competition with collaboration. And I always tell the clients that I work with, when you are faced with a problem or a challenge, do not ask yourself, what do I need to do to fix this problem? The question is, who do I need to be working with or learning from? And so when my husband's dental practice got flooded out, and I told you he was 30 years in, so we thought about him just retiring at that point, but he decided he was too young to do so. And we didn't know, I mean, we live in a town where you throw a rock, you hit a dentist. I mean, there's so many dentists here. And we were like, how are we going to compete? And so he gave me the idea. He said, you know what? He said, we've got a friend who's really successful in the real estate industry. Now, the real estate industry is even more competitive than we are. I wonder what Mike is doing to be so successful in a world where, you throw a pebble and you hit a real estate agent. So this whole idea of collaboration, we went to dinner and I just, interviewed Mike, and Mike said, I said, Mike, I don't have a lot of money. What would you invest in if you were me? Rob's asked me to market this practice. He said, if I were you, I'd invest in a website. Now, at this time, honest to God, I thought Mike was high. I'm like, nobody looks at, what is he talking about? We were all still on AOL and dial up. I thought he was crazy. But I thought, he's more successful than me. Okay. And we bought AshevilleDental.com and we built a website. And we were so far ahead of everybody else that I quit trying to learn from other dentists, and I started learning from industries that were far more competitive than ours and the leaders that stood out. But my point is, you don't always even have to anticipate yourself. You just have a problem. We needed patience. We needed to rebuild a practice. Rather than trying to figure out how to do that on my own, it was so much smarter to turn to people who'd faced far bigger challenges than I had ever faced, were in industries far more competitive than mine, and just take a chance, right? And just listen to what they said. If we built that website and it wouldn't have worked, it would have been okay. It wouldn't have been the end of the world. But we were kind of morphing on the fringes, which then got us ahead of all of our competitors.
So true. I often look when I hear people talking in the dental space and they say, we're going to benchmark you against other dentists. But Omar Reed said to me back in 2010 that 95% of dentists in America get to the age of 65 and can't afford to retire. They haven't saved enough, or their lifestyle is still so expensive that they need their
Yes.
dental income to maintain that lifestyle. So they're still tied to their drill and still working. And when he told me that, I was 50,
Yeah.
and I thought, I'm not in that space. I'm in the 5% already. I've done my planning and I've put it away. And I thought, this is good. And so that was his statement, then allowed me to use that as a gift, that dentistry can be a gift. If you manage your practice well, it can be a gift to have a good lifestyle and a good retirement and retire on your own terms and live on your own terms if you manage your practice well. But if you let your practice run you, it'll just run you into the ground.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think you're making such a great point, and it's one that I just love with this whole idea of anticipation is that, one of the beautiful things about being in business is the fact that there's not a single problem you have that somebody out there within your world hasn't already faced and hasn't already solved. And I think as as dentists, to start to think about rather than trying to solve everything on your own, 'cause it's hard, right, being a dentist. I mean, you run in a practice, which first of all, you were never trained to do. You went to dental school to learn to be phenomenal at what you do, and you need to be phenomenal at what you do. And then all of a sudden you come out, you're supposed to run a business? Like it's one of healthcare is one of the only industries where professionals are thrown into a position that they're never trained to do. So I think, if you want to learn to anticipate, just learn to ask for help and realize all that stress you're taking home at night, all those problems you have, you do not need to solve them on your own because somebody around you is already solving the problems or has solved them or has been through it and is more than willing to help you. So stop asking, what do I need to do to retire? What do I need to do to sell my practice? What do I need to do to, find a hygienist or do this or that? Start asking, who do I need to be talking to? Because your problem, the thing about uncertainty and anticipation, it isn't that you aren't smart enough. My God, you all went to dental school. You're brilliant. It's that saving time, energy, and resources. The faster you move, the better positions you are to seize opportunity. So this is about moving quickly, and we move more quickly by getting people to help us rather than trying to figure it out and solve things on our own.
Absolutely. It's interesting, when I took up golf after at the age of 30, and I was a bad golfer as a teenager. I took it up and I learned how to play golf, and I got my handicap from 22 down to 12, and I joined a Group 1 club, and everybody I was playing with was 10 years or more older than me.
Yeah,
And all my friends were still working hard, and I was playing golf on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and I got invited to go away for a week of golf in Melbourne every year, and every year I went, at dinner, we'd sit together and it was coat and tie, and I'd just shut up and listen because all this wisdom around the table of
yeah,
what people had done was so valuable to me to hear these stories and pick, oh, this person's been successful as a real estate valuer, and this person's been successful in the printing business, and get that information and
yeah,
use those information, and then say, how can I use that in my dental practice? Because there's a way. But if I never learnt that information, there would never be that ability to say, I can use that. And so when I realized that my practice was achieving more than other practices in my town, I worked out that it wasn't because I was doing dentistry any better. I was doing customer service better. And
yeah,
so then I went on this mission to find out, how do I refine my customer service? And that's how I was in the US every quarter in a dental mastermind in Chicago. And that's where I met John DeJulius. He came to speak at this dental mastermind. And then he came to Australia, and I went and saw him. And because the day that he spoke in Sydney, I couldn't see him. I was working, had a full book. But the day that I had off for golf, I cancelled the golf and flew to Brisbane and saw him. And I remember ringing Jane and saying, Jane, this is May. I said, we've got to go to Cleveland in July and do this 4-day course with John on customer service. And it's like, wow, it was just eye opening, because he just had the missing pieces to what I was doing to put it into a system.
and then
And,
it
and
just made it, and then it made it so much easier, right? You were able to move so much more quickly because he had the answers.
Mm, mm. But it was also the most enjoyable training that I ever did for my own team in terms of giving people the responsibility of, what do you do to help the patient have a better experience in the practice? And two people doing the same job in different rooms didn't even know what each other were doing. And
Wow.
then the front didn't know what the back was doing. The back didn't know what the front was doing. And so all of a sudden this created this unity, this camaraderie. And so the sum of the whole became greater than the sum of the whole. If that, the total
Yes.
became greater than the
Yes.
sum. In terms, everybody just got excited about, I'll do that, and that'll help this, and because ultimately we're helping patients. Nobody wants to go to the dentist. Nobody ever wakes up on a Monday morning and says, "Oh, I've got $500. Wonder what the dentist is going to got on sale for me today if I go down and see if I can spend it there." Nobody does that. It's
Right.
it's 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 a grudge buy, as John DeJulius used to say, like tires. Nobody wants to buy tires, and nobody wants to go to the dentist. And so you've got to then make it an experience where the doing of the dentistry is irrelevant in relation to the experience they have in terms of how you treat them.
Right.
That's
Absolutely. In
that's
fact, I do a lot of work in healthcare, and quite frankly, how you treat people is far more important than the quality level of your skills, which is kind of amazing, but it's true. But it's true.
it is true. I used to talk about a radiology imaging place that was so bad at its customer service, with signs and lines and ignoring people. And it just used to, I don't know how they kept getting away with it, but they did. But, businesses do change. I know the motor registry down here, it just changed, and all of a sudden, I think it changed across Australia state by state, that it actually lived up to its new name of Service New South Wales. You walk in there and you don't even have to press the button as to what you want. There's somebody there saying, "Oh, hi, how can I help you?" And they'll do it for you. And then everything is automated, and you are escorted through to what you need to do. And I think that's what we need more in
I would,
dentistry
yeah.
is that personal touch.
I would agree, but I think I think personal touch is an anticipation, right? Like, when I think about if you get your head out of your dental practice and look around, anticipation is about seeing what's coming or what's missing from the marketplace, that what's coming that your patients would value, or what's missing that your patients would value. And in the rise of AI and technology, we've all become very self-service oriented. I mean, it frustrates the heck out of me if I can't email my doctor at night, if I can't make an appointment online, if I can't do these things that I want to be able to do. At the same time, I'm incredibly frustrated if I cannot talk to a human being. So I think anticipation is about just paying attention to what, again, is being introduced to the market that could add value, or what is missing from the market that would have value. And right now, something very big that's missing is personal touch. So it has value, and anticipating that personal touch will be an important service to offer as you move forward.
I agree wholeheartedly. Despite the fact that AI has the answers, it still lacks the perception of
Right.
and
Yes.
the reaction and you know sometimes face to face communication with your client, customer, or patient is valued by them because they can see you're thinking and contemplating. Whereas if you're just watching ChatGPT spin its wheel, it's not kind of the same. But and that's where I think coaching still has a place too for everybody, because it's sometimes you can make up your best work as you go, as opposed to thinking it's something and then I'm just going to present it. And that's
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think the thing is that ChatGPT is great, Claude is great, all those are great, but especially when it comes to people's healthcare, they want to be heard, they want to be listened to, and they want to feel important. And we're not at a point right now where chat can make us those things. That is where you as a dentist need to step in. So again, I think this is just a really great example of, if I were going to leave your listeners with anything, it's thinking about this idea of what is coming that has value. Like, convenience is a big one. I mean, when my husband's dental practice got flooded out and we had to find a niche, one of the biggest niches we found was that people hated to wait. They hated to show up at the dental office and the dentist was behind and they were going to have to sit there for 2 hours. So we implemented this idea where we would call them if the dentist was behind and let them know, so they could run errands or they could stay home or they could do whatever, and kind of give them, those options. That's a thing of saying, I always tell people right now that the the customer complaint, and for you it'd be the patient complaint, is the path to growth and profitability. Like, listen to what people are whining about. It's how Uber got developed. Uber didn't get developed because somebody thought of an Uber. Uber got developed because people thought taxi cabs smelled. You couldn't trust that you were getting the right price and you couldn't rely on them. All they did was develop a car company that solved those problems. So whatever patients are complaining about, they're giving you a gift.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you've got to listen to your patients, because they are your best source of information as to what you need to do to improve. And you're right. Though I do know some dentists who are adamant that it's also a filter. If they don't, it is also hard to be everything to everybody. And so there was a dentist in Melbourne. He used to park his Rolls Royce out the front of his practice, and he would say, "Well, that's my first filter. If they don't like my car," he said, they're not the patient for me." So,
That's right.
but you can only have one dentist like that in every town, I think.
Right.
But you're right. It's listening to what your patients want, and if you can, do it. But if you can't, then you can actually build a niche. I think the interesting thing about dentistry is the Pareto principle applies. You spend 20% of your time earning 80% of your income, and 80% of your time earning 20% of your income. And in that 80% of your time, that's where you're getting 100% of your complaints.
That's right.
And so you can, if you try and grow that top 20% of your practice, look for those people, make those people feel special and important, and get referrals from those. You can squeeze out was it Jack Welch who used to say, if you sack the
Yes.
bottom 10%, you don't have to replace them, because some of the people who you kept will fall back into that bottom 10%. And so, but if you anticipate the nice people and grow those nice people, you'll have a much better practice. It's a nicer part of dentistry. And yet when in dentistry, I see this, Meredith, when they try to be everything to everybody, they end up with a waiting room of screaming kids, and somebody's coming to get a mouth of veneers. They shouldn't be in the same waiting room.
Not at all. Not
But
at
we
all.
see all the time. We see that
Yeah,
all the
it is that's such a good topic. We call it niching to expand in my world. And I get the concept. I mean, you got overhead. I mean, whew, overhead in a dental practice is high, right? And so you're thinking, oh my gosh, I just need a patient in the chair. But the truth is, if that you really know your patient avatar, if you look at your top 10 or 15 patients, those patients who love you, those patients who pay your prices, those patients who show up for every appointment, and you model that patient, like you really define who that patient is and market to find more of those patients, your practice will grow. And the greatest example of it is Amazon. When Amazon started, I don't know about you, but I thought buying books online was one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of. Well, you don't buy books online. You go downtown, you go to a bookstore, you enjoy the process. It takes time. I would never have bought a book online. Amazon did not market to me. They marketed to who they knew would be the early adopters. And those early adopters sold the rest of us on it and allowed the organization to grow. So it's got to be the same way. What is really different about now versus when you went into practice? There were maybe 10 dentists in your town, 5 dentists in your town. Now there's 1 million dentists in your town, and there's large private equity companies in your town. There's all those types of things. So word of mouth has gotten very, very, very important again. And so those patients that you're letting come in that you can't make happy are going out and actually doing damage in the marketplace for you.
Very true. When one of the things I did in my town, and it was like Sydney's second city, so there was already 40 or 50 dentists in that
Yeah.
area. But you know what? I started going to the Chamber of Commerce after 5 events every month. There was no other dentist there. And so then I entered the business contests, that they had for Business of the Year and Customer Service Business of the Year and New Business of the Year. And I got known. And so when somebody came to the Chamber of Commerce and they said, all right, I'm here, I'm moving my business here. Where should I go to the dentist? They
They'd send
recommend
you.
me. And they would say, it's going to cost you a little more, but it's worth it. And I thought that's how I want to be known. It's worth it, because nobody wants to go back to the dentist. Nobody wants to go
No.
to a dentist slow. And it may be cheap, but if you have to keep going back, that's annoying. And so you
Yes.
had to fix it. And so that's what I was lucky again. When I graduated, I worked for a chap, and his crown impressions were so bad, the lab kept sending them back, and he used to have to get the patient back to take a new impression. I'm going, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, all that extra work, numb them up, all that extra work. Just, if it's wrong the first time, just take another one then and there. It'll only take another 5 minutes, and it's done. And learn to do
Yeah.
them properly. And so, being known for being able to do your work well. I remember a dentist saying to me that he was down at my lab, and the lab was showing him my work because they loved it so much. Again, so that also is a nice thing to know, that what you're doing
Yes.
inside the mouth is admired by those who know it's good too. So again, have those skills, because you can do average dentistry and market your way through that, but if you're doing poor dentistry, it will catch up with you.
I
So
always
you've got
say
to be.
in today's marketplace, being good at what you do is your ticket to entry. If you're not good at what you do, you're not going to survive in the marketplace, but you have to market on top of it.
So let's get back to you, Meredith. Tell me, where do you see the next area of disruption? Are you able
Yeah.
to anticipate disruption?
Yes, absolutely. I see the biggest disruption coming in the marketplace. I think everybody's focused on AI. I think it's going to be the succession gap. I think in the next 3 years, every single baby boomer will have turned 65. It's going to be the largest mass exodus of talent, wisdom, and experience from the marketplace. Add to that, the biggest impact AI is having on jobs is at the entry level position where people learn to do the job, where people learn critical thinking skills, where they learn to take a risk, where they can screw up and there's not much damage to the organization. We're eradicating those positions. And so I think in the next few years, we already have it, but I think the gap of people qualified to lead organizations and a desire to run organizations is going to increase tenfold. So I think everybody's focused on AI, and I do not think it's the biggest disruptor. I think the biggest disruptor is our lack of focus on talent development.
It's interesting. My son's worked in software engineering, and he worked for a big company down here. Um, and he spoke about the same thing. There was a lot of churn on the lower levels, but no anticipation for leaders as well,
Yes.
and reward. He found he was just spinning his wheels, and so he just took a year off. He
Yeah.
took a year off. Now, in your day and my day, same day, we just went. We wouldn't leave a job unless we had another job lined up.
Right.
Yeah, that was it. But he just said, well, "I'm just gonna take a year off." And I suppose no mortgage, no girlfriend, no car. He didn't really have many big expenses, and so
Yeah.
he just worked from home on projects and waited. And during that time, there was a meltdown in in that company specifically in terms of stock value and job shedding after he left. And so
Mm.
I guess he anticipated it, didn't he?
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah.
So,
Maybe that's what he did.
well, I think so. I think so. It's interesting, but it's a life's fascinating. So with all these baby boomers retiring, and it's the first time I've because I'm a baby boomer, you're a baby boomer. It's the
Yeah.
first time that I've seen somebody put it that way. That in the next 3 years they'll all be 65, which is true, and it's going to be scary because that's forced retirement. Retirement age has been pushed back a couple of years down here because the pensions can't. The budget for the pensions won't.
Keep
They'll
up.
bankrupt countries, but it will be there is a I guess a gap there because of there's less manpower, and those
Yes.
other generations that follow us aren't really generations. They're 15 years at best, not 18 years, and not 3.5 babies per woman as the height of the baby boom was. So
Yeah,
it's
and so
it's
I think it's it's also this desire, like when we were growing up, our mothers put us outside in the summertime and told us not to come home until the streetlights came on. There's a lot of skills and things that we learned that became very useful in the working world. That those are skills that are not learned today. If we grew up in neighborhoods where if you didn't get along with the kids in the neighborhood, then you didn't have anybody to play with. So we had to learn to work through our differences and work through our challenges. And sometimes you were the popular kid, and sometimes you were the kid who was getting beaten up, and nobody was interfering with that. You were figuring that out on your own. Kids today don't have that. They don't have that luxury of learning the fundamental skills they need to be successful in business to learn them as a child. And I think it's going to be the greatest impact on the business world, far bigger. I don't know, bigger, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but that's where my head is going right now. I'm trying to help organizations focus on developing talent and building the skills into the workforce that they're going to need to have the critical thinkers so that when all this new technology comes along, you've got somebody with the strategic skills to understand how to leverage it, how to use it, how to get people to buy into it. I think those are the skills that are missing.
Yeah, it's true that they're staying at home and playing at home instead of going out. Yeah, I I I remember I couldn't go out to play unless I'd done my homework, but I got to learn how to do my homework really quickly so I could go
Yeah,
out and play because
that's
that
right.
was how it was, and there was nothing else to do. If you stayed at
Right.
home, "Mum, I'm bored," didn't cut it at home because there was nothing else to do, and there was only
Right.
one TV in the whole house,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
it was black and white in
Wi
my house
and
for a
with
long.
only 3 channels.
It was tough. Meredith, anybody watching this, how can they get in touch with you
Yeah.
to find out more about you and, you know, what you speak on? And I'm sure, have you been down to Australia? I'm sure you
I
have.
have. I've spoken in Australia a few times. I've not been in Melbourne, but I have been to Sydney, and I would love to come again.
Well, there you
So,
go.
you yeah. I'm a big
If it,
believer, build your network, change your life. So if you connect with me, I will definitely connect with you. You can reach me at my website, which is valuespeaker.com, just the words valuespeaker.com. And then my LinkedIn, which is how you found me. I'm most active on that social media channel. So that's probably the best one to connect with me.
all right, perfect. Well, Meredith, thank you very much for
Thank you.
sharing your Father's Day evening with me, and I really appreciate you organising the time. It's been great to connect virtually face to face, having followed your material and love following your writings, and I will continue to do so. And I
Okay.
look forward to hopefully welcoming you down to Sydney sometime when you come down to speak. But it's been great.
I would love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great having you as a guest on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.